Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here, Pro Wrestling Logic, with the AEW Dark Report for the 19th of May, 2020. We haven't done Dark here on the program because obviously during the quarantine it's been a much shorter program. We are going to get to adding Dark to the routine of things that we review, provided there's at least two or three matches on each program. I found it pointless to review it when it was one match, right? So anyway, if you're new here, like, subscribe, comment below. We will have the Impact review up as well, and of course today being Wednesday as I record this, tonight we will have the NXT and AEW Go Home show for the pay-per-view on Saturday, which I don't know. I still think doing a pay-per-view during the pandemic is kind of foolish, but at the same time, they might not have been able to cancel the program with the pay-per-view providers and such, so maybe they're in a catch-22 where they have to do it. But if there was a way out, I certainly would have taken it. In any event, big time bunch of matches, 8 or 9 matches here tonight. We'll run through, but one thing I want to talk about before we do the run through is the overwhelming arc of challenges as it relates to one problem I see with the show pretty consistently, and that is every match is made to look somewhat competitive, at least in certain spots. And while that's nice from a perspective of nobody looks like a total loser, it also makes some of the established or trying to be established talent look weaker than they should, especially going into something like a pay-per-view, a couple of occasions like that. And if if enhancement talent is capable of hanging with your nationally televised talent, it actually devalues, at least to me it does, the nationally televised talent to the degree that if everyone can hang, why would these people who are hanging with them not have full-time contracts? And so I'm not a fan of, unless you go out of your way to say something like the AEW scouting staff only scouts individuals they think that could be competitive with their talent regardless of where things are going. In other words, if you're scouted, it's because we believe you could beat one of our branded stars. If they went out of their way to say that, I think that would be a reasonable thing, because then it's like, well, anyone can beat anyone on any given day. But wrestling has been taught, certainly since I don't know, probably the dawn of the television era, really, that usually it's star versus lesser star, or star versus enhancement talent, not enhancement talent that's able to be competitive against star. And it's a problem. I mean, they've done this model in Japan over the years and it works there, but it's never been tried in the States to this degree, and I think it needs a little bit of explaining before they go much further with it. Anyway, Hiroku Shida versus Danny Jordan. I love Jordan. She is a really talented young lady. She's 18, 19 years old, really young, and has a lot of potential. Should not be in a competitive match with the number one contender for the women's division this early in her AEW career, in my opinion. But I love that she got the opportunity. I love how they laid the match out. And I think she's probably, outside of Britt Baker, the number 2 upside woman in the AEW women's division right now, in terms of marketability, in terms of brand they could do something with. Obviously, Britt Baker is that woman, but certainly, to me, Danny Jordan showing a lot of traits that she could be the number 2 in that regard. Anyway, so they open well. Competitive match early. They open with a traditional lockup, which is really, really rare. They trade shoulder tackles, and Jordan hits a DDT off of the second rope. She rolls through and into an armbar. The armbar looks really good. Shida, though, powered out and hit a running knee in the corner for what should have been a closer near fall. I hate that they're using strikes now in most promotions as oh, bam, great strike, and then one, two, maybe a half, and it's not like, in a lot of cases, strikes are being overused, I think, and it's the infusion of UFC and mixed martial arts into pro wrestling, and it hasn't found its place quite yet. Anyway, Shida uses a missile dropkick for a near fall, and then misses an enziguri, but connects with a second running knee to the back of the head for a near fall. The actual finish is a third running knee strike and the use of a Michinoku driver for the win. One thing I liked here is that Danny Jordan post-match offers her hand, and they seem to be having a post-match conversation, almost like Jordan is in the middle of the ring looking for respect or mentorship or something. Anyway, so we go to QT Marshall versus Clutch Adams. Now, I I'm sure Clutch is a nickname. I get it. Maybe it's even a tie-in to some sort of wrestling hold that he does or something. But if the announcers don't explain this, we're left with a guy named Clutch. Are we, to borrow a line from Bobby Heenan, are we to believe that his parents had 9 months and the best they could come up with was Clutch? Wow, guess they didn't love him very much. Anyway, the match was fine. I QT Marshall is a guy that I think if he were a little younger and they had more time to devote to him, I think he could be something. I actually like his tag team with Dustin Rhodes. I think him having mentorship is a good idea. I think it fits the character well. I'm not necessarily sold that he's a great single star. Anyway, he throws an apple in the air and catches it on the way to the ring, takes a bite of it. I actually like this. It reminds me of Kurt Hennig with the pencil on Primetime Wrestling, or the spit and toss the gum. I don't dislike this. Some people do, but I think it's kind of it differentiates him, and it's kind of interesting. He comes up with his ribs taped up off the match with Lance Archer from the week before. This is great. It puts Archer and Rhodes, which, by the way, is the only match they really promoted on the commercial for the pay-per-view. So maybe when they were making the commercial, those were the two guys that were committed to being at the pay-per-view. I don't know what it was, but it really strikes me as odd that there's no sign of Jericho in that commercial. There's no sign of Moxley, who's the champion, in that commercial. There's no sign of anybody but Cody and Archer. And I'm not sure that Archer, as a nemesis, is sufficient to be the one to promote the antagonist side of a pay-per-view match on a commercial. Also, as an aside, before we get into this particular matchup, my gosh, the announcers. Well, I won't go after Taz. I like Taz. I think Taz is one of the top 3 announcers in the well, certainly top 5 in the world right now. But Excalibur, oi. If he's the play-by-play guy on Dark, and he is, and if he's supposed to be the one that's connecting with the audience, and he is, then why the heck did it take him till at least 45 minutes into an hour and a half program to mention that there's a pay-per-view on Saturday? Idiot! I understand that the concept is that they believe that if you're watching Dark, you understand what's coming for the company, and you probably know about the pay-per-view. Great! But let's suppose that the Dark program was in your suggested videos on YouTube and you had no idea what Dark was. Or let's suppose that you've had a busy life with the pandemic and you forgot where we are in the month. Or let's suppose that you forgot there was a pay-per-view for some reason. To wait 45 minutes into a program where, for the most part, these are throwaway matches, the fact that there's a pay-per-view could have been mentioned at least every other match. And the fact that they barely mentioned it except for commercials in between, it shows the inexperience and the to be completely honest, the ineptness of Excalibur in the role of being a promotional juggernaut. Say what you want about Jim Ross, and I will, because honestly, I think he's past his prime and may not be the best person to be in a lead role in AEW announcing. However, he can still out promote and out talk for promotional purposes virtually anyone in the sport, and the fact that even in working with him for, I don't know what they started Dynamite in October, so 3-5, working with him for, let's call it 8 months just for the sake of argument, and not picking up how to do that smoothly and not picking up smooth transitions. No, this is why Excalibur needs to go. He's not professional enough to be a even second string announcer on a national product. I don't. It's really, really poor. Anyway, Marshall comes out with his ribs taped up, as we mentioned before. Adams goes after the ribs, which makes sense, and then nails knees to the rib cage and kicks and all sorts of other offensive maneuvers. Adams with a series of covers, but only gets a series of 1 counts. Backbreaker into a flatliner for a near fall from Marshall, and then Marshall slips off the back of Adams and hits the QT cutter out of nowhere for the win. Virtually everyone does a cutter. That's the move of the 2020s or the 2000s, the last 20 years. Before that, it was the DDT in the 80s. I wish less people were doing cutters. That's just a personal opinion. And the fact that a guy like Marshall, who is more on the loss side than he is on the win side, at least I would think when I see him, and I didn't catch his record, so I could be factually wrong on that. But anyhow, the fact that he's using a cutter it devalues the move overall. Anyway, next up, Marco Stunt versus Jason Cade. Not a fan of this match, but not for the reason you would think. Okay, so I'm not so far in the Jim Cornette bubble that I don't see value in Stunt. Value in Stunt is he should be booked like the old school little person / midget. I understand to some people midget's offensive. I don't mean to offend. I'm describing a character trait. He is small. He should be portrayed in that role, which means have him do spots in the confines of a Jurassic Express contest, have him be in the 6-man matches and tag matches so he can get in, get out. The fact that he's competitive in a singles match, to me, is insulting to whomever he's in the ring with. I don't like it. I don't get it. Anyway, so obviously a very physical match, but how can you not see it? Jason Cade, who I've seen since probably 2015, 16, 17, probably 16, 17. In mainly Evolve and the WWN family of promotions, is a really talented guy who just hasn't found a character that works for him. The fact that he is wasted here putting over Marco Stunt is a waste of his talents, but also it would make me nervous as an independent talent about coming into a company like AEW, because are you kidding me? Like, you bring me in to put over a guy who really doesn't look like he could fight out of a paper bag. Again, there's a way to use Stunt. Maybe you go and say he's got the opposite of giantism. Maybe you go and say he wasn't well nourished as a young person and so he didn't grow. Maybe he's got a disability that causes him not to grow. There's a million ways you can go with it from a story perspective, but the simple fact that you haven't explained why a guy who looks to be about the size of a 12-year-old boy is competitive with anyone who's full size, it hurts the talent. Anyway, Stunt opens up with a sunset flip and then a running knee. Gosh, we've seen like 7 of those tonight. Can we stop? Cade with a cutoff with a simple forearm, and then use of the buckle, elbow blocked, and then somewhere along the way, Marco gets nailed in the nose because his nose is bleeding, which I don't know. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I'm happy his nose bled because it makes it look different when we see blood on TV, and it looks real and it looks like a big deal. Anyway, Stunt slides off Cade's back and hits a poison Rana, which was a nice move, by the way. Follows up with a suicide dive, which I could go 20 years and not see another one and not be offended. Stunt hits a crucifix bomb, followed by a 450 splash for the win. And then there's this really kind of just creepy post-match where Stunt, who gets the win, is just laying on the apron like he's in shock or something, and it just didn't look good. It didn't make for good showing. And I mean, they even sent the doctor out. They the announcers promised an update that doesn't happen on Stunt's condition. Maybe they'll update him on Dynamite, but it was. I mean, if it was a sell job, it was really well done. If it was an actual injury, this is more credence to why Stunt shouldn't be in there. Next is a match that I couldn't have cared less about. Kip Sabian with Penelope Ford and Jimmy Havoc as his partner versus Musa and Lee Johnson. I'm sorry. You can hate on me if you want. You can hate on me in the comments if you want. Somebody tell me why I should care about either Sabian or Jimmy Havoc. Havoc I don't like because he's a deathmatch guy and I'm not a deathmatch person. Sabian, I just don't see it. He's technically good and can be carried under the right circumstances. But if they got rid of both of these guys tomorrow and gave that money to, I don't know, but somebody better for the women's division, or two talents that have been dropped from WWE, or one talent that's been dropped from WWE, or an independent talent that hasn't had a shot yet, I would definitely be in favor of this. And there's a couple other people that I'll say that about in this. And again, it also shows me that watching Dark with the people that have been gone because of the pandemic, it shows me that there's some really, really good talent that are Dynamite level, that are cable ready, and then there's a major drop off, and guys like this are exactly that. I would rather see them push, and I'm going to be very direct here, I would rather see them push some of the enhancement talent, for example, and Alan Eagles, who we see later in this program, than either Sabian or Havoc. I don't get it. I don't see the value they bring. I don't see where there's an upside where someone's going to buy a ticket to see either one of them from a national program perspective. Yes, maybe if you're a fan of your local independent, sure. Maybe if you have an independent that has a streaming service, sure. Certainly if you have a death match or you have a targeted program, both of these guys are valuable, but not on national television. I just don't see it. Anyway, Sabian controls Johnson early, and passable mat wrestling. Havoc gets a tag and nails several strikes on Johnson. Musa gets a tag. I wonder what a Musa is. I would like to see them do a personality profile type piece on the guy. I think there's something just based on the name. Maybe it's just his last name, but I'd still like to know more. Anyway, Havoc acted as though he's going to lock up, but then he just throws punches. Havoc and Sabian worked as a team quite well here. Musa back with a flying head scissors and a drop kick. How long has it been since we've seen a flying head scissors, eh? Johnson tags and hits Sabian with a drop kick for a 1 count. Lots of 1 counts. I think 1 counts have become the in thing again. Havoc takes the referee. Sabian gouges the eyes of Musa. Then there's a one-legged drop kick by Havoc. Sabian hits penalty kick, which I'm sorry, he's not Zack Sabre Jr. level by 1,000 miles. Um, and then Havoc hits a kind of a release underhook suplex, which was cool. And then Musa hits Sabian with a back elbow, and Sabian sells that on the apron for quite a while. Johnson gets a hot tag, runs around for quite a bit. Havoc cuts him off, hits an acid rainmaker, which, if you don't know, is just a modified lariat, and then a implant DDT for the pin. Fine match, good for what it was, but I would rather have seen the enhancement talents both get shine than to put any more money into. Actually, and I'm not a Penelope Ford person either. There's a Penelope Ford best of collection on High Spots. If I have time in between my various business ventures, I might give that a look over the next couple of weeks just to see if I can see anything in her outside of being a pretty face. Because I don't get her either. Anyway, Ray Phoenix, one half of the Lucha Brothers, the half that's stuck in the States, versus Sean Dean. They've really been doing a good job of at least giving Dean he's a military guy kind of deal acknowledgement. They do acknowledge, finally, the existence of the pay-per-view this coming Saturday. They acknowledge this by acknowledging that Phoenix is in the casino ladder match. I guess there's a championship match to be had. I'm assuming Darby Allin's going to win that, and we get Allen versus Moxley 2 at some point. That's if I had to take a guess. Although one thing I like about AEW is it's harder to predict where their stories are going to go. Which, man, it's been forever since I could say that about a national wrestling company. We're probably talking. Oh gosh, probably Attitude Era for all the wrong reasons. I've seen a non-predictable company that way. In any event, Phoenix looks decent. I'm not a lucha guy, but I can acknowledge he is really good, and he's just as good as a single as he is as a tag guy. Phoenix is a guy that can pull a good match out of anybody. I just wish he did a few less lucha spots, but I get that that's his role. I understand it. It's just not my personal cup of tea, but I respect his athleticism and his ability to bring good matches out of people. He does have an art of selling to him, and then so Dean hits a beautiful drop kick. Phoenix answers that with a spin hook kick of his own, and then uses a cross arm breaker. Dean gets to the ropes, forces a break. Dean avoids a brain buster and hits a step up knee. That's 7 on the knee count, folks. In a corner, and then Phoenix rolls to the outside. Dean hits a tope con hilo. Oh, by the way, I came up with another thing that drives me nuts. So the prevalence, especially in AEW and some other places, is to use the Spanish names for common moves. Okay, I get it if you want to infuse it that it's Lucha Libre is where some of these moves came from. But tell the viewer that. If I'm going along and I'm talking to you and we're just having a conversation, and all of a sudden I start speaking another language, you're going to scratch your head and say, what the heck are you talking about, right? So aren't the fans at home who aren't on the internet all day, who might be casual and flipping channels, going to go, what's he talking about? What's that called for that for? How hard is it when you need to use or want to use a foreign name for a maneuver to go, hey, this move is called this because this guy in Mexico or this guy in Japan or this guy in wherever was the one that created it, and we pay homage to him and we call it this. That took me probably 15 seconds to say, and it would make the announcer, especially Excalibur, who's needing credibility, a lot more credible in the long run. Anyway, Dean hits a series of strikes. Phoenix hits a tornado kick, I guess I'd call it, and then into a spinning muscle buster for the pin. Dean post match looks quite frustrated. I think there's more to him. I think they need to, if he's not already on contract, putting him on contract in the next wave of contract offers, which probably aren't coming for several months with the pandemic, but that's regardless. You know, I think at least considering him in that way, a good idea. Okay, so Luther versus John Cruz. Remember I talked about people that I wouldn't care if they fired? Yeah, Luther. Okay, number one, he's a deathmatch guy. He's not my thing. Number two, the character's just stupid. So he comes out and he has a red dot in the middle of his head, and he says, "Pray for blood." Okay, so maybe you're going for like the Charles Manson Psycho thing. But then he has this high pitched voice like his nuts are in a tourniquet, and and that doesn't work. And his fighting style for a deathmatch guy doesn't work. It's very punch kick. It's wasteful. Um, Supposedly that Luther's like 50 plus years old, which maybe they're trying to fill the senior citizen quota. I don't know. Anyway, he's not good. He's not great. Maybe he was big in like some third-rate Japanese company somewhere, or maybe he's good because he just about cuts his jugular vein or something. But I don't get it, and there's no reason he should have money coming from a national company. So, complete squash match. Luther hits chops and kicks and stomps and punches and everything you expect from Bruno Sammartino, only pretending to be more violent. He slams Cruz, who, by the way, is a really good talent. I've seen him in the WWN family of promotions for quite a while. And to wait for your big break for a decade and a half and have this be it, just sad. Anyway, so he slams Cruz into the barricades. He hits an inverted suplex along the way. He uses a camel clutch and then fish hooks the eyes and the mouth and gets a ref stoppage submission from that. Complete waste of time. If I don't see him again, I would not be offended. Private Party, another team that if I don't see again, I wouldn't be offended. Versus Ryan Rembrandt and Mike Reed. Reed's got something. He's kind of interesting to look at. Rembrandt, I think, has something. I've seen him a few times before. I'm pretty sure he's out of AR Fox's school. So he's got, decent training behind him, but just no. Private Party matches are formulaic. They do a bunch of spots that make no sense. They're athletically gifted. The gimmick doesn't really make sense except they like to party. And you want to slap them because they're frat boyish. And then they hit a sequence of moves that aren't well stringed together. And then they do athletic stuff and then they go home. Quinn does the majority of the selling. Cassidy does spectacular stuff until the finish, where Quinn usually hits the finish. That's every Private Party match. That wasn't this match, but it's the majority of them. Private Party opens with some decent tag moves if you like spot. Cassidy gets clotheslined over the top rope by Rembrandt, and then Quinn gets a hot tag, hits a backflip kick, and then a plancha. Cassidy hits a step up in Zaguri, and he hits a walk-up sliced bread. I hate the moves that look like they have to work together. It's like 1, 2, 3, go, please. Go headbutt a brick wall. This is supposed to look like a fight. Anyway, so Cassidy hits the silly string on Reed, but Reed is not the legal man. The referee points this out. Maybe they're going to start caring about tag rules. Telling us this might have been a good idea before you do that spot. Then the finish is a swanton bomb for the pin. Completely skippable match on a show that's already got a few too many matches. Private Party is, in my opinion, wasted money in the sense that if you're not going to do, I mean, think about it. They opened the original TNT broadcast with Private Party, and 8 months later, they've got a losing match streak. They're like 7-11 total in the company, and so with the 11 being losses, and or maybe they're 8-11 now. But anyhow, and if fans never saw them again, outside of like the independent, you know, statisticians who know everybody from everywhere, I can't see the average fan caring if Private Party fell off the face of the earth. I don't see it. So anyway, Sammy Guevara, who is probably, I would say, within the top 3 AEW homemade stars, versus Alan Angels. Angels is a guy, if they don't already have him on contract, they need to put him on one. He's probably the best of the enhancement talents who doesn't need to be an enhancement talent right now. You know, I think they could have gotten a good crowd reaction here if they had the ability to have a crowd. Guevara hits a basic trip tackle from the beginning, and then Angels comes back with a takedown of his own. Guevara hits a beautiful drop kick, which Guevara's drop kicks are one of the best in the business right now. And then Guevara hits a vertical suplex. Angels comes up with some submission stuff. Guevara turns Angel over into a cradle. Angels mocks the layout pose of Guevara in the match, and Guevara hits a running knee strike, taking that count to 8 on the program. Guevara did deadlift squats with Angels on his shoulders, which for a guy of any size is impressive, but for a guy as compact as Guevara is like really something super. I wish he'd save that for matches that really, really count, because I think it's an interesting heel spot to say the very least. Angels turns Guevara over with a crucifix and gets a near fall. Guevara hits a delayed vertical suplex, second vertical suplex for him in the match. They exchange chops and strikes, and then Angels teases the go to sleep. Guevara hits a knee strike, and then the finish hit is a falling knee known as the GTH, or Go To Hospital, from Guevara for the win. Darby Allin versus Septico, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but anyway, Allin is my favorite AEW guy. I think he's the best non-national level talent transition that AEW has done. I would love to see him be like the second TNT champion, or find a tag partner or something. Darby has such an upside, and he's in his mid-20s, got so much time left. Anyway, so the Masked Man controls the early part of the match, and then hits a slingshot double stomp and a slingshot cutter. I mentioned cutters, just too plentiful. Allin makes a comeback and hits a superplex, which was well done, although I remember when the superplex was a finish. I wish he'd done this right before the finish instead of where it was. Septico sent to the outside, and then we hit a coffin drop to the floor, and then Allen tosses him back in and used the Last Supper pinning combination for the win. During this, Taz is still making hints at wanting to manage Allen. I think that would be an interesting pairing, but for the most part, for a YouTube show that is just to give fans extra content, this is phenomenal. And it's why, and no, I'm not, as one can imagine and one can hear, I'm not an AEW fanboy by any stretch. They have a lot of things that they need to work on. But the one thing that comes forward week in and week out in this company is the talent that works there, men and women alike, love what they do. They love what they do. They love being a part of their, of the company, and you can see it. And that doesn't come across in WWE product for the most part. That doesn't come across in NXT for the most part. It may come across in certain independents, but I can't remember the last time that a national company had so many talents that look legitimately happy to be there. And it makes me more happy to watch their product because the talent looks happy to be there. And it's a small thing, but it's enough that week by week you notice, you can feel it, you can sense it. Anyway, that is the AEW Dark review for this week. Up next is Impact, which will be along shortly. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.